peculiars. I'm so glad that you can be with us tonight because we have a lot of things happening. We've got the return of Charming Disaster. We have I have Morticia Hare that we can talk about. There will be show and tell, and we have an amazing author. We're going to be talking about women in STEM and how crazy the medical system is. And this is just going to be a wild night. So I'm really glad that you guys are here. Davey, I'm glad you're here too.
I'm very glad to be here. This book was very fascinating and inspired some creative ideas, I'll say. And so we got a lot of fun stuff to pack into the show for everybody.
We've got several people have talked about how it was a good read. We also have we have folks here from Vegas. We have folks here from Virginia. Oops, and it's moving quicker than I can move my my thing. Leanne is here from Virginia. Sureka
all the V's are represented.
Right. Well, and then we have Sureka, who is from abroad, and it's like 2:00 in the morning or something crazy like that. And she's here with us. So that's really exciting. It is going to be a fun night. And I also have to say that it's been kind of a shit week, frankly. And so I'm glad we're all here so we can celebrate peculiar, weird, cool book things. It's better programming, frankly, than what I think we've been seeing on TV lately. So to you podcast listeners as well, this is better programming. Just stick with us. Stick with us.
You don't need to be listening to those normal talk channels you listen to.
Right. We won't steer you wrong. So without further ado, let's introduce our author tonight. And everyone, a big welcome for Pamela.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. I'm sorry for my voice. I'm sick.
Oh yeah, everybody, it's that time of year. Also, Joanne wanted to pop in to say that one of her all-time favorite reads was Molecules of Emotion, also by Candace Pert, which is pretty cool. And also we have some people saying hi from Indiana. Oh yeah, it is a much needed palate cleanse. This is going to be a palate cleanser kind of evening, I have to say. I'm reading from the comments up here. Susan Cotter saying, crappy week, ready to relax. So it's so good to have you here. And now I will say this book made me mad at politics plenty.
Yeah, not really a happy book.
Me too, by the way.
but a whole different set of politics than what we're dealing with right now, which is kind of nice in its own way. We have some announcements. We've got some other things going on tonight, but I always like to start off because I think it's just the question you should ask, right? I always like to start off by saying, how did you come to write about Candace Pert? What was it that led you to this book topic?
Well, interestingly, it was Molecules of Emotion.
Was it? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So a number of years ago, a friend of mine recommended that I read Molecules of Emotion because she knew that I was interested in integrative or functional medicine and, the mind-body connection. And also I was doing research for a screenplay that I was working on because I used to work as a journalist, but now I both write and produce. And so she recommended Molecules of Emotion and I read it and I was like, holy cow, this isn't research for another project. This is the main event.
This is the project.
This is the project. And in fact, where this started was 7 years ago. I read this book and I approached Candace's widower, Michael Ruff, with my producer hat on, with the intention to get the rights to her book because I wanted to make it into a film. I was like,
oh, interesting.
This is like Hidden Figures meets A Beautiful Mind.
Right.
I mean, it was like this story of this woman who, she was quite well known in certain circles in her time, but it had seemed to me, her legacy had been at least partially forgotten. And I wanted to sort of bring her to life again on screen. And so because she had passed away in 2013 and the memoir was published in 1997, I had I got the rights to her book, but also signed a separate agreement with her widower, whereby he agreed to let me put on my journalist hat. So he said, because I was like, what are the last 30 pages of a script? How does Candace's story end? So what I ended up doing was interviewing her friends, her families, her family, her colleagues, and all of a sudden realizing, oh my goodness, there's so much more to this story.
There's so much more, right?
Yeah, than what was in her memoir. And in fact, her memoir is in some ways quite skewed, even though I deeply loved it, So it felt like it necessitated another book.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, there's times when I have book ideas that turn into articles, but then there's other times when you think you're writing an article and it turns into a book. When I did Mr. Humble and Dr. Butcher, and I went to talk to the family of Dr. White, and you know, she's like, "Oh, I have this stuff. I'll bring it to you," and it was boxes and boxes. I was like, "Oh, this is
it's like a treasure trove."
It is, but it's also kind of overwhelming at the same time, I think. So, so that's amazing. So a book led you to a book.
I know. I was inspired by Candace herself.
You know, I have to say, so many of the people who are here as viewers of our show and are readers of books are also writers of books, and I think a lot of us would say that we're led into writing via reading. So and if you're watching the show or listening to it tonight and you're a reader, this might mean you're a writer.
Yeah.
Is there a stigma about that? Because I feel like filmmakers always talk about filmmakers that inspired them. Like stand-up comics always talk about, musicians always talk about their influences. Is there a stigma with writing?
Nah.
I don't think
there's so much stigma against writers already. Like, what's a little bit more?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, this wasn't an original idea that you dreamed up,
I know. Yeah. How many original ideas are there now?
Yeah.
There's at least, what someone said, that we had all the original ideas, like, it was like the first thing mankind did was came up with all the original ideas, and all we've been doing is spin-offs ever since.
Well, also the funny thing is, like I said, it's hidden figures. I mean, the way that all projects are sold sort of in Hollywood or for streaming, it's this meets this. It's hidden figures meets a beautiful mind. It's this, and so, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite of the stigma. It's actually positive.
Plus, how many Marvel movies have we had, right? I mean, come on. Like, clearly. You can keep on going. We had a couple comments. Miss 1234 Smith said people did not hold back the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly of Candace, and that is absolutely true. Liam O'Neill says an amazing read. Feels like there's a lot more to the story, a story left untold. And Leanne was saying, sort of among the ranks of like the Rosalind Franklins and Tharp and Lehman discovering the core of the earth, you have these figures who do these game-changing things. I think Joanne a minute ago called her a change maker. Let's see, there it is. And yet they don't all actually get recognized for what they do. And so I think being able to resurrect that is, I think, a really worthwhile and interesting project. So congratulations.
To me, it felt like, it became a calling. It did feel like a sacred duty. And especially because, we were talking about, you referenced politics and stuff before. The really interesting part of this too, was that I was talking to many scientists who had been Candace's colleagues, who are now sort of at the end of their career. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them were saying, you know what do I have to lose anymore? I'm going to tell you what it was really like. I'm going to give you the inside story. And so in part, I feel like I was incredibly fortunate to get this very unvarnished, real account of things that happened, 20, 30, 40 years ago, a history that I thought I knew, but I really didn't. And is much more, in some ways sordid than I would have imagined.
Yeah. But for one thing, being a woman in STEM, while it still kind of sucks, but was so much worse even still than what I think we encounter today. And so there's a lot of that in the story, but there's also, the backbiting. I have to say, like, Fauci drops in my estimation through the reading of this book. I was kind of like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
Well, there's quite a lot of people who kind of came out of this me going, oh,
I know. So what was interesting is I was actually doing so the core of my primary research during COVID. So what was so interesting is I was being told, we're all being told to trust the science at a time where I am uncovering, and by no means is Fauci, public enemy number one in this story at all.
No.
I mean, he was 43 years at age 43. He was the youngest head of an institute at the National Institutes of Health, the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. He was dealing with, pardon my language, much bigger swinging dicks. There were people much more powerful, who were controlling factions around him. And he was also in an environment where there weren't the same biotech laws as there are now. So,
yes,
for folks who have read the book or haven't read the book, but Fauci was running he was during the AIDS epidemic, he was put in charge of the 19-member committee that decided which AIDS drugs would move forward to clinical trials. And
guess what? It wasn't a meritocracy.
Not in the least. I mean, interestingly and quite tragically, there were people on that committee who had financial interests in competing drugs. Yeah, so there was absolutely a conflict of interest. And it was not only not a meritocracy, it was a meritocracy. In many ways, it was quite corrupt.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, corruption just seeps out of this book in so many different ways. I mean, not from you. I mean, from the story. But before I get to, I want everybody to guys put your questions in the chat feed, be following the live feed, because that's where all the things are happening. And I will say this, feel free to extrapolate too, because I think that we can ask a lot of questions about women in science and about, a lot of us here, a lot of us on the show, myself, all of us have been let down by medical systems too. And I think that's something we can talk about as well, particularly women being let down by medical systems. So I welcome those kinds of questions too. I'll star them and we'll come back to them. So you guys type those in. In the meantime, I got to put on my my announcement hat here. So I can do the announcements. Davey's going to help me. So first of all, opening slide, always good to remind everybody that we are kind of everywhere. We're the most ubiquitous club anywhere, I think. We're in all the socials. We're everywhere that you look, we're there. I tried to make sure that I got Peculiar Book Club as a name on every conceivable social platform. So we're out there. And next up, this is kind of our hub. I'm redoing the website right now, or having it redone. And one of the things I'm really trying to focus on is ease of use, getting people where they need to go. Because I realize we have a lot of things going on here. For one, for the reading, you can read us on Goodreads. You can get to us on bookclub.org. We're actually, Jennifer is in the process of exploring another platform even for us. We are so on Blue Sky, Miss. Yes, we are. We are on Blue Sky everywhere. I'm on Blue Sky. I practically live there myself. We also, you can watch us on YouTube, and YouTube, please do subscribe. I know it's weird, but like and subscribe. You might get tired of hearing that, but it does really help us out. You can join our Facebook group to participate. So we have the Facebook page. We also have the Facebook group. Most of you are there. It's awesome. It's fun. We share memes. Of course we do. And then the podcast, which is now a trifecta, because we have this is also a podcast. Some of you are listening instead of watching. And then we have Davey's film podcast, his Peculiar at the Movies podcast. And now we have Peculiar in Mystery also happening. And that our first guest is going to be Deanna Rayborn. And later this year, we're doing Chuck Wendig. And we've got lots of other cool people coming along. So please join us there, like, subscribe. What is it that they need to do, Davey? There's a star thing.
If you're listening on the podcast feed, make sure to give a star rating, 5 stars if you enjoy us, and leave a review. People did it a few years ago, and it feels like no one's clicked that button in a while. So go ahead. Let's see if we can get a bunch of 5-star reviews and boost up the old algorithm there.
Yeah,
on the podcast
help
feed.
us out there, guys. Help us out. And then next is what's next?
Oh yeah.
You can support us on Patreon. Yeah, newsletter's next. There we go. Newsletter. The newsletter is lovely. You can please do join us. The nice thing about newsletters is they don't go down when platforms get all messed up, do they? So we can send you all the links that you need on our newsletter. And I also try to be amusing. So in addition, it's usually pretty fun to read. Sometimes there's, videos. Oh, yes. Membership. Peculiars are supported by Peculiars. I just want you to know that if you're watching tonight, all of the show, the music, everything that we pay for here is supported by other Peculiars who are VIPs through our Patreon link. You get extra stuff. You get to go backstage with authors. You get swag. You get extra content. You get to recommend books for the next year. But mainly, a big heartfelt thanks to all of you who are patron. who are VIPs, because you really are what keep the club going, and you're basically supporting each other. So it's really awesome. For as little as $5, you can get all the VIP shows. So book cocktail. All right, this is my favorite part of the day. Kat is our drinks maven, and she has become kind of like this amazing, this wealth of drinks knowledge and creation in ways that I'm floored by how she comes up with these things. Tonight's drink, which I didn't make because I'm still getting over a cold, but then again, maybe I should have, because it's got stuff in it. Seems like it would be very helpful. Cinnamon and ginger and cloves and sugar and lemon juice and saffron strands, and it's amazing. And the name that won over on Facebook is Elixir of the Goddess of Neuroscience. And this is your cocktail, Pamela, for your book for Candace Pert.
I know. I wish I could drink it. I'm drinking tea too.
Yeah. Kat is our water witch. You're absolutely right. Kat is like, it's like she has a witching rod for alcohol, and she's just really good at it. It's amazing. So many, many thank yous for that. Next is our podcast, right? That's you.
Yes,
all
it
you?
is.
It is all Davey. Go, Davey.
So it just dropped this morning. So
Yay.
we actually got our January episode out in the month of January. Are you impressed with us getting together? So for last or 2 weeks ago's book, Invisibility by Greg Gabor, we did an Invisible inspired movie. We did The Invisible Man from 2020, kind of a remake, kind of a reboot of the classic Universal monster, of the classic H.G. Wells story. So we had a lot of fun discussing this, the themes, the deep themes that run through this movie, what it would be like to fight an invisible man. There's some of the technical things. We got really into some of the technical ways, the cinematography and the ways they made the movie. So like usual, me and my podcasting partner, Darren, who discusses movies with me, we went extra deep.
I know, I love that.
On this one. So
like a duck's vagina.
Like a duck.
If you've followed our show, you'll know that's very, very deep.
It's a peculiar throwback right there. So check it out. It's live on the podcast feed right now. Coming up next month for February, we've never done this before. We're still trying to pick a movie because we need to find like an alien movie. But we're trying to find a movie not where the aliens come to Earth, where we go out to find aliens. So it was kind of an interesting twist on it.
There's not that many of those, are there?
No.
I mean, there's some Star Trek type.
I was thinking about Star Trek. Like, what would be the best, like, Picard goes out there and helps a civilization kind of movie, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe we'll do, like, 3 episodes of the show. We did that before with House.
Or, or you could pick the old Star Trek in which, they go to... Kirk basically goes to sleep with aliens, I think, not rather to... Isn't that usually how they go?
We did do the original movie, the original Star Trek movie. I don't even remember if it was for this show or for our old movie show, but
Galaxy Quest. Wait, no, Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest.
Echo Girls is like Galaxy Quest.
The best Star Trek movie ever made is Galaxy Quest.
It is. I love that movie. There's a part of it that I actually, the first time I watched it, it was date night. Mark and I weren't married yet, and I laughed so hard I actually peed my pants. It's when they accidentally turn the one animal inside out when they bring it in.
God.
It's like, it's inside out, and I just lost it.
Alan Rickman.
Yeah, that was pretty good. By Grabthar's Hammer, yes. We should pick a new slogan. Last couple years was all the absolute unit. Maybe By Grabthar's Hammer needs to make an appearance in the
Trouble with Tribbles.
Trouble with Tribbles. That's Randy. Yes. And it exploded, Anthro Girl. Yes, you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Anyway, but we've gone far afield. We do have some questions coming up. We've got some questions popping in here from various people. I also do have some show and tell to do with you guys, but I'm going to wait, and we're going to get to some questions first because I don't want them to get too far out of field. So we have a couple. One, Nancy Morris is here. She says, Candace is my first cousin. We grew up together and remained close. Her untimely death numbed our whole family. Candace was supposed to be in New York the last days of her life. So that's really interesting. I see that Nancy's been talking with Leanne and a couple other folks in the feed. We also have a question from Leanne. This was early on and I didn't quite. Well, first of all, Leanne had mentioned that Alzheimer's research and Alzheimer's drugs, also a similar thing as with the AIDS dilemma. Do you see some parallels with that too?
I don't know a ton about Alzheimer's drugs and research, so I'm not really sure.
It's not pretty, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Maybe Leanne can backfill some information on that.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that it's not pretty either, but I don't know enough to offer an opinion.
Yeah. And I think that it so far from what I understand is like anytime pharmaceuticals is involved in this country, things are going to get bad. It's not going to be good. Leanne's next question, again, this is early on in the chat, so I was trying to catch these as they were going by. She said, how can anyone avoid being a hostage to their own ego? Blind faith in your own virtue seems to have a bad end. That's her question. But also, I have to say, like, blind faith in your own ego is also kind of how anything happens too. This was true with the egotism of Dr. White as well. Thoughts on that?
Well, okay, so I will actually go back to sort of, I'm going to go back 400 years. No, but I think one thing that is really important to mention here is that, everything that Candace did, nothing happened in a vacuum. And so a lot of what I was trying to do while researching this book and really immersing myself in her life is to try to see her within the systems that shaped her, both the academic systems and the sort of American medical system at the time, and and arguably today. And so what Candace was doing, just exceptionally radical interdisciplinary work, right? I mean, she wasn't just pushing the bounds of her field, she was refuting the reigning paradigm that had been established by Rene Descartes, the father of modern philosophy and science, right? And his paradigm had defined Western medicine for more than, since the 1600s. So, I mean, going back at the time, the Pope had granted Descartes, and this was something that I learned through this book, and maybe your viewers and listeners all knew this already, but I definitely didn't. At the time, like, where did the Western medical system come from? Why is it silo-based the way it is today? It's because in the 1600s, the Pope granted Descartes permission to dissect human bodies for study, because the human body was considered sacred, and therefore, if you wanted to do an autopsy, if you wanted to do dissections, then you were going against God. So what they on a handshake deal, they sort of agreed that if the mind held humans' inherent sacredness, that once the soul had departed, then the body was fair game for study. Basically like above here, all God, down here, a meat sack.
Yeah.
And so what Candace was doing in suggesting or proving, frankly, the mind-body link, the fact that the brain is not the control center of our body, but rather works in concert with our immune system, our endocrine system, our gastrointestinal systems, to generate our thoughts and emotions and really create our reality. She was saying that the body had innate intelligence. So she was contesting the very basis of Western medicine, like the whole foundation on which modern scientific thought was built. And so I'm going to get to the question. That was like a very long preamble. But I think, when you are doing that type of radical interdisciplinary work and you're overturning systems, to your point, Brandy, I think you really have to have, Candace, and I don't use this term lightly, she was a genius. She did exceptional things, and she, in many ways, she was challenging all of these conventions. And so I think it was, I mean, I think that the very thing, like so many of us, that made her great was also the characteristic that sort of, proved to be in some ways her downfall.
Right. Well, and I ran into this. I keep comparing this because it does remind me of Mr. Humble and Dr. Butcher. Dr. White was also this genius guy, amazing surgeon, who also believed and he was very much a mind is separate from the body kind of guy. I mean, he felt that his research proved that the brain was the mind and the mind was the soul, and he was helpful and part of why they can declare brain death and then abstract your organs. And so he was very pro like, no, we want to keep this separation because then we can harvest bodies.
Yeah.
He also was friends with the Pope, strangely enough. So there's some kind of Descartes kind of Dr. White thing going on. But you have not just somebody challenging that. You have a woman challenging that. And she made so many enemies because she was a woman. I mean, it's hard to even imagine, but like if you tried to think about what if Candace had been a man instead, this would have been a very different story, probably with a very different end.
A very different story. And so, I mean, it goes to sort of this whole question about, when there's a certain type of, there are certain characteristics that define leadership, right? And for almost all of time, those characteristics have been sort of very stereotypically male, strength. And, he had to be tough to succeed. He had to sort of
I've heard
put
that.
down other people. I think when it comes to this sort of very male version of brute strength leadership, there's a lot that gets excused if the outcome, if the ends justify the means,
and of course the ends don't justify the means.
They don't.
A woman is doing it, because that automatically, and it's so interesting. As I was reading, it's not that I think that Candace gets a pass on everything that she did. She did some stuff. She did some black market selling of drugs for kind of good reasons, but still kind of also a lot illegal. So she did all kinds of crazy things, and she had to push the envelope, and she did step on people because that's how the entire system is kind of built. And I'm not giving her a pass, but every time I was reading these situations and going, but if you were a man, no one would be mad. Like everyone would just be like, well, what a strong personality he has, right?
No, it's so interesting because, almost all of her colleagues were male, right? Of course, she's existing within these systems where there really is only that one mode of leadership at the time.
Yeah.
And so women and people of color enter these systems and they have no choice but to sort of emulate. Like that's what gets you to the top. If you want to succeed, you actually have to sort of emulate those characteristics, that mode of leadership. And yet at the same time, if you do that, and you're a woman, then it proves a poison pill, because obviously, then you're difficult, you're a bitch, you have sharp elbows and all this stuff. And I mean, again, that's not unique to science. It's everywhere.
No, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. But in science, it has a particular kind of edge to it. So Leanne was saying this comment, women only engage in girl talk, was sort of leveraged against Tharp, as another woman in science. Susan Cotter says, yes, ambition is a dirty word for women, but yet very positive for men. And so, I know that this story becomes more and more controversial. So if you guys haven't finished it, it gets wilder towards the end. And, there's even controversies around Candace's death and like all kinds of things. And again, so much of this is the fact that she's been weirdly sort of forgotten.
Yeah.
Or brushed under the rug. Again, all of this really comes back, I think, to the fact that she's a woman. She's a woman in STEM, doing something that she's not supposed to do, and she's doing it in a way. We did a book on. Did we do? No, I reviewed a book. Sorry, I get my hats confused. On Mary Curie, but Mary Curie's her situation was quite. She always presented much more like, this is a woman doing science. You know what I mean? There was like this very gendered quality to it. And Candace was not that person.
Candace was not that person in any way, shape, or form. I mean, Candace really was a firebrand in every aspect of life. And, we touched on, one of her, major contributions, which was proving the mind-body link and, leading the way toward integrative or functional medicine. But she also, I mean, I like to say that she's like this Forrest Gump figure who played major roles in three major, in three movements.
I mean, well, the
history, right?
The receptor,
the opioid crisis, the AIDS crisis, in addition to the mind-body revolution. And for her to do that, I mean, she had to break a lot of eggs. But she was, I mean, just to give you a sense of her character, part of the reason that I also just sort of fell in love with her, and I was like, gosh, what an incredible role. Again, wearing my producer hat for an actress to play. I mean, Candace, when she was married to her first husband, Pert, he was in the military. And Candace decided for a holiday party to bake anatomically correct gingerbread cookies to bring to the Christmas party of his Southern Baptist colonel. So it's like the unveiling was like really, people like fell off their chairs.
I love
and,
that.
Yeah, I mean, at the height of toxic shock syndrome, Candace attended an NIH Halloween party dressed as a bloody tampon.
I did hear that story. Yeah. So
Yeah.
she'd have fit in really well with us here, I think.
I mean,
totally.
I love her. You know, I mean, she was a wild woman, but she, you know, I mean, she launched all these paradigm shifts, but, you know, definitely not without a fight.
No, and not without, I mean, again, I think that you handle very candidly the fact that she did things that you shouldn't do, you know, and the throw girl, little Nas did that too. Well, there you go. Dressing as tampons, kind of thing. But you know, I think you handle very candidly the fact that, carefully, I suppose I should say, the fact that she did unethical things, but she was part of an unethical system, and unethical things were done to her. And I know, you know, you're very careful about the way you handle the end of the book and the end of Candace's life, but like it's messy. There's a lot of mess in the things that happen.
It certainly is messy, you
yeah.
know, and in some ways, you know, when I was looking at her story, you know, and this is why I felt that it did necessitate another book, because her memoir, you know, I mean, I think anyone writing a memoir is sort of, you know, one is the hero of one's own story, or heroine, you know, but I think that there were a lot of things that were sort of, that I was discovering that had been sort of whitewashed in her memoir. And I understand that the role of legacy and how important it is. And it was challenging for me, because I really did start this process as a fangirl. I was sort of like, oh my gosh, this woman is incredible. She's done all these amazing things. She's not remembered the way she should be. And so, you know, as I was discovering some of the things that that she was involved in as her life went on, and as her mental and emotional state became increasingly fragile, and we can talk about that, but, you know, she did have bipolar disorder. And so, as do many extraordinarily brilliant people who have contributed to science and other fields and culture. And so I was trying to, I mean, I did really want to be fair and try to be fair. And, but there were many times where I just felt like I felt sad, because I was crazy about her. And it was sort of, you know, it's like when they talk about, you know, don't meet your heroes sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know that there's been a lot of controversy about her after her death, and that there was controversy when it happened, and that there was discussions. You said there was no autopsy. I remember that you mentioned that in the text.
Correct.
And I know that there's a lot of, it's coming up in the chat is partly what I wanted to say. There's a lot of discussion about, you know, the unknowns surrounding her passing. And I don't know how far you want to talk about that, if you want to talk about that, but there is, you know, she was ill. But, you know, it was a very, very dark time. And so I was just wondering if you had more to say about that. But at the same time, I also I realize that, you know, there's, I want to give you the freedom.
There were a lot of questions. There are a lot of, there's much that's unanswered, I will say, about Candace's passing. And many people, you know, I think my job as a journalist, right? I mean, it's not to sort of declare what happened, but I did sort of investigate it. And there were many people who were asking a lot of questions about how she died, and bringing to light sort of what was going on when she died. And the interesting thing is, right up until she died, she really wasn't ill. You know, I spoke with her general practitioner, Zitty Berger, who said that, and her family, who said that, you know, I mean, she was quite overweight, but she was only 67 years old, and she had been hiking in Peru 6 months before she died.
Right.
Altitudes, like she didn't have any health problems other than being sort of, you know, very stressed and overweight, any physical health problems. And, she was a scientist who had spoken in Molecules of Emotion. She writes very reverently about autopsy and the sacred nature of her own work. The moment when she realized that the sort of the brain tissue that she had been working on in a lab, when she went to the morgue and saw that, and saw this brain that she was picking up and had read that person's obituary that day and realized the sacred nature of her work. She was a scientist and an organ donor. And so her children, whom I interviewed, they said that they had requested an autopsy and that they pushed for an autopsy because they wanted to know, obviously, if their mom just drops dead at age 67, is there a genetic component to that? Is there something they needed to worry about? And their stepfather had denied that autopsy. I guess they, at the, in the hospital, apparently they said that he was asked whether she wanted an autopsy, and he said no. Even though she was a scientist and an organ donor.
Right. Nancy had asked why she didn't end up getting to donate her organs. Is that true?
That is true.
Yeah. And Nancy was saying, why wouldn't she be able to, why wasn't, especially since it seems like she was largely healthy at the time.
She was, she there were no discernible physical health problems. She was largely in a manic state at the time of her death. There was a lot going on within her company. There was, obviously there was a 4-year lawsuit between the CEO of that company and her, her widower that took place after she died. And there was some speculation among, both family members, colleagues, and, the investors in that company is, many people said to me, the timing of this death feels uncanny. People thought maybe she was going to come clean. They had been accused of doing various things within the, within their company, Rapid. And it was the prevailing view of a number of investors and Candace's children that she was going to sort of talk about that. And then suddenly she dropped dead.
Yeah. So it's layered, isn't it?
It is layered.
It's very layered. So, So I wanted to talk about that, but at the same time, I sort of feel bad because I know that might be a little spoiler for some of you guys, but you knew that she was gone. So
yeah, I know.
Well, that part's not a spoiler, but yeah, there's some real questions at the end of the book, and they're not questions that you can answer. That Pamela's not trying to answer them necessarily, but they're just presented as like, these are things we should probably talk about.
It is something that struck me because as I was researching, but the funny thing was, it's like I didn't even have to. I sort of, when I was having these thoughts initially, I was like, gosh, that feels like a weird time, timing for this all to happen. And I suddenly I barely even, I sort of was softballing it, thinking I was not going to, I didn't want to poke the bear with her kids, with other people. All of a sudden, I couldn't stop people from talking about
it. Yeah. So that's I ran into some of that with Mr. Humble and Dr. Butcher too, because the family itself was feuding at the time, which is never great. So you don't know who's happy about what.
Yeah.
So Leanne, okay, I got 2 more questions coming up, but I just realized what time it was. Okay, so we have to have a musical interlude. We're going to have our musical interlude. Charming Disaster is back. I've queued up some more questions. There will be show and tell after Charming Disaster, and we have to make room for, of course, the quiz at the end. And if you are part of the quiz, those who get the most questions answered the quickest also get a chance to read a signed copy of the book by Pamela. So first, let's get charming.
Oh, hello.
We're Charming Disaster.
And we thought you might like to hear a song about another scientist whose life got a little complicated.
Marie Curie.
After the death of her husband Pierre, after a long period of mourning, she found love a second time with a colleague, Paul Langevin.
But Paul was married, and when their affair came to light, there was a huge public scandal.
It made international headlines.
And inspired at least 2 duels.
The resulting outcry threatened Marie's career and even her life.
But not Paul's.
This song is called A Glow About Her, and it's from our album, Our Lady of Radium. Did you hear about the scandal? She can't be a natural woman. His poor wife and children. His wife tried to save her honor, publish their love letter, stolen right from me and brought them by the hired detective. Her friends thought she would mourn forever. Then one night she came to dinner with a flower at her waistline and a glow about her. Everyone knew he was unhappy. His wife had a violent temper, beat him with a wooden chair leg. What a holy terror. These days, tools over the slander, fought with swords and pistols. Didn't have a leg to stand on, it was clear as crystal. Did they think no one would notice? They had no discretion. It was right under our noses, never any question. Her friends thought she would mourn forever. Then one night she came to dinner with a flower at her waistline and a glow about her. Everyone knew he was unhappy. His wife had a violent temper, beat him with a wooden chair leg. What a holy terror. These come walk away with me from all this tawdry chatter. I'll fight them all for you. We are the only two that matter. If we could only stay here in our little sanctuary, I'll hold you in my arms, but I can't keep this world at bay. I have done nothing that should cause my work to be diminished. I found a love when I thought love was gone and life was finished. Dragged through the mud, my name, my private face, my reputation. I will not run, I choose to risk my life for my position. These days, did you hear about the swords and pistols? Didn't have a leg to stand on, it was clear as crystal. Did they think no one would notice? There was never question. It was right under our noses, never any question. Did you hear about the scandal? She can't be a natural woman. His poor wife and children. His wife tried to save her honor, published their letters, stolen right from me and brought them by the hired detective.
Hey.
Wasn't that great? So they picked that specially because they thought that would work well with the story of Candace Pert. And
I love it.
I know. Wow, says Leanne. I know. It's really
great.
powerful. That whole album is amazing. Charming Disaster. If you are new to us, Charming Disaster is our house band, and they are a band in their own right, out there doing amazing stuff. They're actually launching a new album in May, in New York, right around the same time that I'm launching my next book. So it's kind of exciting. Yeah, they're wonderful. So you get to see them often on our show, along with Cord Ravenswood and Susan Huang, who you see as tiny little, they're all really amused that I've made tiny little dolls of them, which means this sort of leads us right easily into a little show and tell. So I decided today to talk a little bit about what I actually do with these. I didn't bring the regular dolls, but several people have remarked on the organ that Susan Huang plays. I built this. So this is actually, it's built of wood and clay and then painted. I glued my fingers together twice in the process. For the little pull keys, because it's supposed to be an organ, those are actually doll eyes.
That's so cool.
You know, it happens. And I also brought one of the little felted cats. So over the years, things have changed. I originally tried to do all this with clay. And I have to say, clay is not the easiest thing to work with. It dries out, it cracks. So I ended up starting to felt small animals. So this is Wallace. You can tell because he's got a pot belly. And he's bendable. So there's a little armature under there. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where best to put him for you to see him. But here he is.
You've got it. We see him.
Then I'm working in so I'm disappointed with the armatures underneath the dolls. I made the clay heads for all of them, but the dolls themselves don't move as easily as they should. For stop motion, you want there to be a lot of small motions. And so I've begun the process of building my own armatures, which move more easily. And I've discovered something called cause clay, which is a clay that remains flexible after baking like a rubber. So we're going to be doing some experiments with that. I also have this doll. I really like this doll a lot. I know it's kind of creepy, but I think that's why I like it. This one is actually for a video that I'm making as part of my book trailer for my next book. So this little guy will come back down the road. So that's my show and tell for today. That and my fake hair that is doing me a service this evening since it is 9 degrees outside.
Yeah, you've gone too far down this rabbit hole. You just a feature film.
I'm never getting out.
Yeah, you have to The Nightmare Before Christmas 2 or something like that.
I know. I got started. My neighbor got me involved in all of this, and it's just kind of gotten out of hand. I don't even know how much money I've spent on this.
I love this. This is so cool. I was like, it's called cosplay.
Cosplay, yeah.
Cosplay.
Like cosplay.
It's like cosplay.
Yeah, it's great. So it's very
excuse me.
Wallace and Gromit step aside, says Sharon Rooney. Yeah. And Wallace is, of course, my cat's name as well, but he's named after Alfred Wallace, the writer who is, because my other cat's name is Charles Darwin, so it made sense.
Brandy, speaking of our animals, we do have something to show the Peculiars tonight.
We do. We have a special video, which also is about a scientist who doesn't get as much credit as he should. So.
Hi, it's me, Kenobi, lead researcher here at the Dog Health Research Institute. Here at the DHRI, we are studying all diseases that affect dogs. And we think we have discovered something. A receptor in the brain that could cure all dog diseases. And there's something very common we found that reacts with this receptor in the brain. It turns out the answer to all dog health problems is bacon! Lots and lots and lots of bacon! You can give us bacon while you're cooking it. You can give us a piece of bacon off your plate while you're eating dinner. You can put that bacon in our food bowls. We'll even do tricks to earn bacon from you. As long as you're giving us bacon, it will cure all our health problems. Believe us, we are doggy researchers and we have done the science. If you want your dog to live a long, healthy life, then just give it more bacon.
We have to believe them. They're doggy researchers.
They're
Been
doggy
at my
researchers.
house recently. This is like Sunday lunch. My dogs start going insane.
Of course, the answer is so clear. Bacon. Bacon is the answer. That is hilarious. Kenobi is also a regular. Kenobi has been a lawyer at different times. Kenobi
That's
has
right, yeah.
many.
Oh, he's been on. No, he was on trial. He was
Oh, that's right,
he was a
he was
defendant
on
on
trial.
trial.
He was
Yeah, as a
defendant. I
cadaver
forgot.
dog.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. We have to love Kenobi. Too good. Too good.
So
All right. So we have time for a couple more questions, and then we're going to do. I've got 2 more questions, and then we're going to do Davey's quiz, which is always awesome. Plus, you guys have a chance to win the book. So Leanne asks, and this is a very complicated question, and so I'm going to do my best to. We'll try to give a condensed answer, but she said, "What did she do though that was really so devious?"
Oh, so here's the question. I mean, so I know devious is a loaded word, right?
It is. It is.
It was alleged, right? First of all, let me just say that it was alleged. So some of what happened, what I found in my research was that, and you could say that there were a couple things. Let's start with what happened at the National Institutes of Health. Candace was chief of brain biochemistry at the NIH while the AIDS pandemic was raging. And she developed Peptide T, which is, it's actually the underground AIDS drug featured in Dallas Buyers Club.
Mm-hmm.
And we touched on this earlier, while she was at the NIH, there were, after having been ignored for a very long time by President Reagan and the Reagan administration, suddenly there was a legitimate focus on finding a cure for AIDS. And what happens when the government gets involved in wanting to find a cure? Money. And people who didn't care at all before suddenly care because they're clawing for grants
Right.
and power and the Nobel Prize. And so suddenly there were a lot of, it was like, this vicious scrum. There were a lot of people who were trying to come up with cures for AIDS because they saw personal power in it. They didn't necessarily care about the homosexual community.
Right.
That was being afflicted. They cared about their own personal advancement.
Right.
Not everyone, some people. I think Candace really did. Candace had an ego. She did care about her own advancement, but she also had a deep heart, and she wanted to help people. And so there's a question of, whether some of the things that she did, were they just devious, or did she do them sort of initially? Did some of the things that happened in her life come initially out of good intentions? I mean, what Evan, her son, said was like, oh, the road to hell was paved with my mom's good intentions, and so part of what she, it was well established that Candace's sister Wynne, she had been an art restorer at the Met and also had a mental breakdown, moved right near Candace and Michael, near the NIH. And she had a lot of contacts on the AIDS underground. And so the way that Candace's husband tells it, I mean, he denies having, or her second husband denies having any knowledge of this, but there's a big question around whether Wynne, who was an art restorer, could have found peptide powder by herself, could have procured it from Ang Tao on the West Coast, who was Candace's premier supplier for all of her experiments on the, at the NIH, and mixed it up in the lab. I mean, Michael said that Wynne, Candace's sister, and her chemist friend Larry Quart were acting alone when they were working in the NIH labs that actually Candace and Michael were running at the time.
Right. Right.
Do we believe that that's possible? Probably not. Candace's sister Nancy, who's here, said that Wynne didn't do anything without Candace's direction, but Wynne became the primary contact for various AIDS activists on the underground.
Yeah.
So people have wondered whether Candace was, actually the mastermind behind all of this. And many other people said that she was. Ken Mayer, who was running the Fenway Clinic, said that he didn't want to hear anything. He didn't want to know. But Candace told him that she was sort of running, an underground operation while working as a federal government employee. So do we think that that's devious, or do we think that that's actually sort of circumventing bureaucracy? Does that make a folk hero, in the way that she's actually trying to get this drug that she believed deeply that would save people, disseminated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
the maverick quality, and this is the other thing. I'm a historian of medicine going much further back, because this kind of maverick qualities in the 19th century just meant you were good at it. You wouldn't call that devious in the 19th century or early 20th century. You just say they were good at it, right? Wow, they were amazing. So it's a very complicated question, which we can never fully answer. But Liam's last question, and then we must go to the quiz, was just it feels like her death is the beginning of a next book. Are you ready to dive in there? Are you like
that may have to wait a while. There was certainly a lot that didn't make it into this book for a variety of reasons, but I think I think that there are really legitimate questions that were raised by family members, colleagues, friends around the nature of her death, and particularly around, how and when she died. So, I think there probably could be another book in that. Have I started on it yet? No, not yet.
No, I like it.
I'm getting through this one.
Yeah. Well, right. You're still, yes.
I was the interesting thing was, I thought I was writing a biography, and then when does biography become true crime? And I was like, oh wait, I need a new spot on the bookshelf,
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. Well, we're ready now to switch into Jennifer Pierce, who I mentioned earlier. She's with us now, just in time for the Davy quiz. Jennifer, like as with all of you, you have a chance to win a signed book, but this is Davy's quiz is like one of our favorite things. So take it away, Dave.
All right. Well, before we jump into that, I just want to say that, there's so many stages and periods to her life that you said, working on a movie of it, it feels like a high drama TV show. Like, like the AIDS epidemic could be an entire season.
Interesting. I totally agree. It started with my desire to make it a film. Now it's like, I was like, oh my gosh, no, series.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of juice.
All right, so there was something from early on in the book. There's so many interesting things, not just the end of the book and the mysterious death, but there's so much from the beginning of the book too that's fascinating. Her early life, her childhood, her family, how much of a wild child she was growing up.
Totally.
So there was something that caught my ear, being a Jewish kid from Cleveland. You called her a real Shayna Madel.
Yeah.
And you talked a little Yiddish in the book. And that got me thinking, what other fun Yiddish phrases can I find to quiz you on? It is such an interesting hodgepodge hybrid language. So this is our Yiddish quiz.
Yiddish quiz.
It's called She's a Real Shayna Madel. So 3 questions and peculiars. Put your answers in the chat. So from the famous opening of Laverne and Shirley, what is the difference between a schlemiel and a schlemazel? A, one is a man and one is a woman. B, one is clumsy while one is unlucky. C, one is just cheap while one is always broke. I will say this is a very hard quiz to put together because there's like 10 Yiddish words that all mean the same thing. And then there's, one family, these people kind of thought this word meant one way. Other people kind of think a word means another way. So it's a little bit tricky to put together, but
okay. All right, let's see. We've got Leanne's weighing in saying C. We've got Liam with B.
I'm going to warn you right now, by the way, this song will be stuck in your head. I was whistling it all afternoon.
We've got B's and C's. So we've got B's and C's.
All right, we need Pamela gives the final answer.
All right, what's the final answer here?
I think it's a B.
She's going B. Okay. The answer is yes. One is clumsy while one is unlucky. Okay. It was described as a schlemiel would spill their soup on a schlemazel.
On a schlemazel. Okay, that's hilarious. Okay.
All right, question number 2. If the kids are acting up, a parent might tell them to knock off all that nonsense by saying, knock off that Michigas, knock off that Schmendrick, knock off that Shenik. What do we think? Huh? I've been yelled a lot of Yiddish phrases have been yelled at me.
At you?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of us from this generation, you get like one word just sprinkled in here or there. That was kind of the fun of it.
Okay,
Well, this, well, that.
Anthro Girl says A. Liam says A. Sharon says A. Sharon Roney says A. Leanne's going with C. All right. I got nothing. I speak in no Yiddish. You're going with A?
Going A. Pamela's going A. The answer is yes. That mishigas
is A. Okay.
Yes, would be that nonsense. All right. Question number 3, your final question. If you were to join a book club that could be described as peculiar, you might use this Yiddish word for it. Verschligene, Nebisch, or Unheimlich.
Unheimlich.
What do we think means peculiar?
I hope it's the first one. That's amazing. Say that again.
I like that one too.
Verschligene.
Verschligene. I hope we're Verschligene. That's amazing.
You know, when I was in Hawaii for my honeymoon, they taught me if you want to like say the words right, pronounce every vowel. Every vowel. If there's like two I's next to each other, you pronounce every vowel. For Yiddish, it's take every consonant and slur it together into one syllable. Like they all have to come out of your mouth at the same time.
Got it. Okay. So we're all over the place with this one. We got A's, we got C's, we got a B in there.
Oh, Anthro Girl, they're all Yiddish. Don't worry. They're all Yiddish words.
Oh, they're all Yiddish words. Okay.
Yeah. All right, Pamela, what do we think? What is your final answer?
I'm with Brandy. I love A. I want it to be A. I don't know, but I want it to be A.
The Yiddish word that most closely translates to peculiar, maybe uncanny, is the word Unheimlich.
Unheimlich. Okay. Wow.
Yes.
C.
We're the Unheimlich book club. Yeah.
Oh, Unheimlich. What's the other word mean?
Well, so fur was like what's it called? I'm blanking on the English part of things. That's added to the beginning of a lot of words. So for this, for that. I forget what Verschligene means. I think it's another word for nonsense, or so many of these words like schmuck, putz, schmendrick, schlemie, like they could all be idiot. Okay. But in different variations.
Together. I'm pretty sure that we've got, I think, Liam with Sharon as a close second.
Was our winner?
Am I right about that? I think so. I might need your help, Davey, to go back and check my work.
German, yes. Sarika's right. So the it comes from German, yeah.
Yeah. Unheimlich.
And that's what Yiddish is. It's German and some Polish and other European languages.
There's so much German in my head now because of this book. I don't speak German, but I had to translate whole books from German into English, and then because I couldn't afford my translator the whole time. So I would translate them and then send my translations to the translator, and she would fix them because it was cheaper for her to fix my translations. But I don't speak German. So it was just like me with like some software and a gigantic dictionary. And it was a whole thing.
Good for you. That's hard.
It's wild how many of these Yiddish words are just part of our language. Like I was going through lists of words and I was like, nope, that's a common word. We say that every day. Like it's so funny.
Verklempt is the one that I picked up years ago, and I still use that one. So, Davey, if you could just quickly check my work, but I think Liam is
we will double check
the earliest with the most answers, and I think Sharon Roney follows as our two winners. And by the way, if you're listening on the podcast, the first person to email me after listening to this with the right answers gets a signed book. So you just got to do it, though. You got to send me an email.
Email address is in the description.
It is, and it's easy. It's peculiar@bscalace.com. Okay, my last name might not be the easiest, but I'm easy to find. Daggone it. .com. All right. Yes, German is just angry English. Wait, what's this? Anthro Girl says German is just angry English, and all the words are combined. I taught myself French. I had to teach myself French in college, but I didn't speak it. It was a language translation test. And you see, it doesn't look the way it sounds. So I got really good at reading French, but was reading it wrong in my head the entire time. Because like there's just back ends of words don't get pronounced that way. So then I had to get a tutor to teach me. And I got this small Parisian woman. She was just this tiny person, this very, very small Parisian woman who was the meanest, person like I've ever met. And whenever I would get things wrong, she would say, guillotine. So yeah.
That takes me back to summer readings. When you'd have to like read the book for the summer and then you come back for the first day of class and the teacher says the character's name differently. And I was like, no,
you're like, you're destroyed.
No,
you're like, no.
It's burned in my head the other way.
Right. Yep. And so anyway, this has been an amazing evening, Pamela. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad all of you were here. This was great. I'm glad my new hair was here, which is also great. It looks quite realistic, but what's really funny about it is I get hot flashes, and when I get a hot flash, I can just like take it off, and it's just talk about like really messing up or be like, oh, it's hot in here. Whew. Just like, oh my God.
You really freak people out at a restaurant, take your coat off, take your scarf off, your
and then
hair
just
off.
Whole thing right off. It's great. Anyway, it was wonderful having you here. I'm so glad you guys could be here. And Liam and Sharon need to send me their addresses. Also, you can get to me to get free books. We'll get those out to you. Am I forgetting anything, Davey? I'm always afraid I'm forgetting something.
I think we've covered it all.
Thank
you for a fascinating book.
This was a fascinating book.
Thank you very much.
Journey.
I love your show, and I was so happy to be here with you. And thank you again for the review. I'm really.
Oh yes, it was a great book. I reviewed it for Wall Street Journal. So thank you, thank everyone for coming to a place where, if you're weird, you're family.
You got the blue bottle blues when you wake up in the night. Don't make a big mistake, 'cause you can never make it right. When you reach out for the vial, feel the ridges in the glass. It's a matter of survival, baby, better watch your back. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no